things like ethics and policy making, individual choice, community responsibility, changing economic times, changing global climate. And the idea is that we have to keep working with people who can spread the buzz. In addition to the Xerces Society and everything happening at UC Davis, all around California, there is the California Farm Bureau. It's one of the largest organizations in the world for one of the largest economies in the world to bridge that gap between what happens on the farm and what happens at policy, at the top levels of government and municipality, and also how people every day can get to know more about how our food is grown. And our next guest, I'm delighted to have on the Bee-a-Thon. Come on in, Ria. Ria Grassi is an agricultural issues and policy analyst for the nonprofit California Farm Bureau Federation, a trade association representing the California farmers and ranchers. Originally from a small town, and later educated. You're a farmer too. You come from a farming background, right? Farming background. There we go. Ria contributes to the Farm Bureau's weekly newspaper, Ag Alert. There's a great one for you. And has a circulation of 32,000, over 32,000 people every week. And their coverage helps enlighten not just their membership, but also others whose work might affect the honeybees in some way. The Farm Bureau's magazine, California Bountiful, has an even bigger circulation of about 44,000. Now, I met you at the Louis Schwartzberg event at the UC Davis Robert Mondavi Center. The Mondavi Center just set up an entire research arm called the Honey and Pollination Center over at the Robert Mondavi Institute. And we went to an event where we saw Wings of Life, the beautiful new Louis Schwartzberg movie. And it was delightful to connect with you. So I'm so glad you could be on the Bee-a-Thon. Ria, welcome to the Bee-a-Thon.
Delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
All right. So now we got so much to talk about because we're talking about working with the public. And if that's not something that's an endless endeavor, I don't know what could be. So
True enough.
So now your background as a farmer, you've seen some changes in the farming industry, right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, we have fewer farmers in this day and age. In fact, the average age of a farmer in California is 58.
Wow. So it's like much of the demographics here in the United States. It's a shifting upwards as far as the ages.
True enough.
And then, of course, around the world, like, for example, in India, I did some lectures in India, and somebody gave me a statistic there that out of the 1.2 billion people, 40% of that 1.2 billion is under the age of 40. So we have a global, imbalance that's happening. And California, of course, the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. What's it like to try and advocate for bees at such a massive scale?
Well, one of the challenges is that because approximately 2% of our population is directly associated with growing our food and fiber, is
2%. Just
right?
2% that keeps the entire food chain going in the United States.
Correct.
Yeah, wow.
And that's across the country. So
Okay.
it's a typical statistic that we refer to. And with that, there's a challenge of not only educating the general population, but also school children. And so our organization has an affiliate called the California Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom. And that particular foundation does a tremendous job of making inroads to schools, getting youth to appreciate where their food and fiber comes from.
Wow.
And in that effort, they do include education about honeybees.
Very nice. So it's not just educating the science, because that's kind of a leap for a lot of people, especially from lower income or immigrant populations. Maybe the idea of connecting with bees directly isn't so important, but when you tie it into food, all of a sudden people become very interested, right?
Indeed they do.
Yeah. Now, of course, the honeybee, of course, in California, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, it's really the almond industry that drives so much of what happens on the West Coast as far as the fruits and the vegetables go. But we talked about something on the phone that is an interesting conundrum. Let's say on this side of the field, you have a wheat farmer that's wind pollinated. And on this side of the field, you have a watermelon farmer, right? And he needs honeybees. Well, the one really, really wants the insecticides, and maybe the other one certainly doesn't. How do you navigate that conundrum as an advocate?
Well, I believe all farmers have an appreciation for the plight of the honeybees and pollinators. And clearly those individuals who are most closely associated with using the services of commercial honeybees are most familiar with what the challenges are with them. And I don't know that in somebody who's like a wheat farmer would have issues with somebody who's across the road needing pollination there. It's more from the standpoint of getting everyone to appreciate why bees in their entirety are important to agriculture. Dairy farmers, for example, have to rely on honeybees not directly but indirectly, because in order to get the alfalfa seed to grow the alfalfa that is so important to the diet of a producing dairy animal, you have to have honeybees.
Wow.
So dairy farmer may not have the direct concern, but certainly has an indirect concern. And part of our job, whether as a staff person or as individuals writing for our weekly newspaper, whatever, is helping to elevate the understanding and appreciation for our pollinators, not just in the general public, but within our own agricultural circles.
Sure, and that's probably almost a different message altogether, because it's one thing to teach people about bees or the importance of pollinators or to talk about it, but when your livelihood depends on every crop, all the water, how's your soil, what's the cost of seed, all the market prices, the global things, sometimes I would imagine a honeybee importance kind of takes a back seat. They just want to get the food produced, right?
True enough.
Yeah.
But we have to keep the plight of the honeybee in front of folks, including before Congress and regulatory agencies. Our organization has been involved for a number of years in various educational activities, including advocacy, in order to get the attention that the honeybee and other pollinators are needing.
And now I know we can't go too far into the issues of agricultural, like corporate business growing food versus small independent farmers or organic farmers. You did bring some of your publications, so maybe we can take a quick look at these.
So one of the ones that I brought, just to give you an idea of some of the coverage that we have done in the organization.
Here, I'll hold this up for you.
So this is our magazine, California Bountiful, and this was a
Hey,
particular...
Matthias, could you zoom in on this, buddy? There we go. So this is California Country Magazine,
which is now called California Bountiful. So this issue was from a couple of years ago, and the title of the article, What's the Buzz About Pollination? And as you can see, not only do we have beautiful photographs in this magazine, but interesting and enlightening text. And you will find also, if you flip the page, there'll be somebody you'll recognize, person you've just finished interviewing.
There he is. See, it's documented what an expert he is. Dr. Musson,
Eric Musson, yes.
How about that?
In fact, Dr. Musson sits on our statewide bee advisory committee. It's a committee we've had for more than probably 30 years now. And he acts as a liaison, so helping to inform the process of our organization's activities in terms of our beekeepers making recommendations to our statewide board of directors.
Great.
And that
so he's
sort of
really
thing.
working at the top.
He's working
at
the
top shelf, yeah.
And then here's another issue. And this one actually
I recognize her too.
Recognize her, Kathy Keatley-Garvey.
There you go.
And she
There's
does
Kathy.
a fabulous job of highlighting the importance of the honeybee and other pollinators, and doing it in an absolutely stunningly beautiful way with her photographs.
Yeah, she runs the blog for UC Davis Entomology, and then we got one ag alert. Probably have time to show just two of them.
Two ag alerts. I want to point out that this is just this year alone, and these two stories. One is talking about the bee numbers declining, and the other one is about feeding the bees. So the people who read these are not just beekeepers and not just the farmers who are making direct use of the honeybees, but also the other individuals who we have as subscribers or to whom we give complimentary issues, including pest control advisors. Those are the people professionally regulated by the California Department of Pesticide Regulation who advise farmers throughout the state on use of crop protection chemicals.
Well, and that's a huge issue. It might be the substrate of this entire production. How does the human world impact the honeybee in trying? It's a means to an end. And what is the best means to an end? Obviously, if you had one message to send out about the honeybees, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a professional message. Maybe it's just something that you've observed in your teaching and talking to people. What would you like to share with the guests, the viewers of the Bee-a-Thon?
I think too many people have been looking at the honeybee as perhaps something that's about stinging.
Yeah.
And I think as more people come to appreciate, you give them their space, and they're perfectly excellent insects to have in your garden and not be afraid of.
Absolutely. And that goes for most of them, just about all the pollinators. They're gentle creatures when they're just trying to do their job. It's just like people, if you leave people alone, generally it works out the same way either way. So one last thing, how can people reach you if they need to talk to you about any of the work with the California Farm Bureau Federation?
Easy enough. Actually, if you're on the internet, you can just do a simple Google search for the California Farm Bureau Federation, and through there you can definitely reach me. We
Beautiful.
have a link there where you can send an email to our communications division.
Well, Rhea, it's a delight to have you on, and I hope you can let other people know about the Bee-a-Thon 4 right around the corner, right? Planning for next year already. Rhea
Thanks.
de Grassi, thanks for doing that.
Thanks for inviting me.